Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. So glad on this episode to be talking with comics creator, author R. Alan Brooks. May I call you Alan? How would you like me to
Yeah, man.
call you
Uh,
by name?
Now, Alan's good. I only include my first initial because it makes me Googleable because I have
I
such a
get
common
that.
name. Yeah,
I usually put the middle initial in for anything that I write because there are a couple of Jason D. Arts out there that write. So
yeah.
I totally get that. We were talking about the Burning Metronome, and I've checked that out online and explored a little bit of what that's all about. So glad to be talking about that. And we were just chatting before I hit the record button. It sounds like you have an author lineage. It sounds like you come from a writing household and background. So if you want to share about that, that would be maybe a great place to start.
Yeah, I mean, my dad is a lifelong journalist. Um, but he started at Asheville Citizen Times in North Carolina. But then
Hmm.
in the 80s, he moved to the Philadelphia Inquirer and then later to USA Today. And he was there, USA Today, for 30 years until maybe about
Nice.
10 years ago. And he's a finance journalist. And so now, and actually, so I'm named after him, but it's funny because I used to joke with him because he was always talking about doing a novel, outside of the journalistic stuff. And before I put out my first graphic novel, I put my first one out in 2017. So this might have been like 2015, 2014. I was talking to him and I was like, Dad, if I put out a book before you, I'm just going to use your name. Like, because I go by
Yeah.
Alan typically, and he goes by the first name. But I was like, I'm just gonna be the first name, and you're gonna have to figure something else out. And then he beat me on the technicality. Like USA Today put out a book of his columns, but
Nice.
right about the time I started writing graphic novels, he started writing like he's put out a couple books. They're sort of like historical, um, not fiction, nonfiction, historical nonfiction, and so we've had this like parallel path where he's putting out books, I'm putting out books, and we're both like speaking more in public and stuff like that. I know that was a long answer to your question, but here
No,
we
that's
are.
it's cool. That's interesting. And yeah, in addition to your dad, I'm curious about some of the other author and comics influences that have been part of your journey too.
Well, and I should also mention my mom put out her first book this year, so maybe the floodgates are broken open. But so my dad actually introduced me to comics when I was 5 because he wanted to encourage a love of reading, and I started with The Flash, written by
Mhm.
Carrie Bates. But it was Barry Allen was on trial for murdering the Reverse Flash.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and for most of my life I didn't know really any people who were into comics. Except for when I was around 10, I made one friend who went to another school who was also into comics. And so we would get together and talk about it every once in a while. And then we started going to comic book conventions when I was about 11 or so, and he was 12. And we would go to conventions and be like the only kids and the only black people. But it was great because it was the only time that we got to talk about anything comics related, you know? Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was that's pretty dope. And so I've read them my whole life, but and I used to draw when I was young, but when I got to be a teenager, I got waylaid by hip hop. Uh, Girls responded to hip hop more, so I was rapping, and
Hmm. Hmm.
and I did that for years. I was like a battle rapper in my 20s, and when I eventually came to Denver, which was my late 20s, I ended up doing a lot of shows where I would hire jazz musicians to back me and stuff like that. And I guess what really happened is around 2012, the musicians I was hiring, they were definitely hired guns. Like they did it and they did it pretty well, but they always kind of had attitudes. Uh,
Hmm.
Even though they made most of their money, their rent off of the shows, because we were doing like 50 shows a year. Um, but it just kind of burned me out. And so I was like, man, I'm barely making a living, and for all of this, I could do something square and make a real living. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I quit rapping and I picked the squarest thing I think maybe I could think of, which was insurance. And so I bought like 5 suits and started selling insurance. And I did it for like 4 years. But it was the first time in my life I wasn't doing anything creative. And I kind
Mm-hmm.
of burned out on it. So around 2016, I was like, man, I've never tried to write a comic. I'm going to try and write a comic. And I listened to all these podcasts about writing. And I did a Kickstarter and hired this artist, Dion Harris, and worked with this other artist who's as a colorist and letterer, Matt Strackbine. That dude designed the Olympic ski team's uniforms for like 9 years. So
Wow.
yeah, so any place in that
Nice.
book where like you see a design of somebody's t-shirt or a painting in the background, like that's he did all of that, you know. But
Nice.
yeah, so I tried to raise like 8,300 for this Kickstarter for the and this was the original Burning Metronome. And
Uh-huh.
and we raised about 16,000 to do it, which was surprising to me. And
Yeah.
off
Nice.
of the
Nicely
strength,
done.
thank you. Yeah. So off of the strength of that book, so I'm, as I mentioned, I'm here in Denver. Somebody from Regis University, which is it's based here in Denver, they read it, the book that I self-published, The Burning Metronome, and they hired me to teach in their master's program. I had never taught before, and so that comic book made me a professor, which is just crazy. And
For
then,
doors open, right? Yeah, and you
right,
never know where it's going to go exactly.
yeah, it's unexpected and amazing. And then the so some reporters left the Denver Post because it was having some troubles, and they started their own paper called the Colorado Sun, and they approached me and asked if I could write a newspaper comic, and I was like, yes, even though I never had, And so
Hmm.
so we've been and I hired and at the time I was just writing, I wasn't drawing, so I hired this artist Corey Redford to draw that, and it's 7 years later, or I guess 8 years later, and we've won multiple journalism awards for it, which was crazy because I didn't know I was a journalist. And the first one I won, my dad, so it was from the Society of Professional Journalists. And so he won a journalism award in Maryland where he is from the
Hmm.
same organization. And I won one. And so it was kind of a cool thing, like we both won them and I'm named after him and it was near Father's Day and it was all cool.
Nice. I love it. I love how the universe comes together that way sometimes.
Yeah. Then that led to me, so it led to me doing that newspaper comic, led to me doing a TED Talk, which I did in 2020 to an empty room because it was COVID. But I thought
Oh,
it,
yes.
I thought for sure people were gonna hate it because there was no audience, but that one's around 3 million views. And then it also led to me having some comic book work in museums, Denver Art Museum, Museum of Contemporary Art, the Amon Carter Museum in Texas, um, all this stuff that I never would have thought was possible, especially when I was growing up with comics, because nobody had respect for comics, when I was a kid.
I remember that well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like if you would have told young me that comics would make me a professor and get my work in museums, I just wouldn't have even believed it.
Yeah. Pretty cool how those things work out. And culturally right now, I mean, you mentioned getting into hip hop to be appealing to the opposite sex, which is totally understandable from the backstory of comics.
Right,
Uh, but there's some cachet in there now. There's a little bit of
right.
connection that goes with it. So they're getting some respect in ways that they should.
I have two very distinct moments in my life that I like to put up against each other. So around 2007. So I like to I go out dancing a few times a week. It's just like cathartic to my soul, right?
Hmm.
And even if nobody else is dancing, I don't even drink. I'll just be dancing and enjoy it, right? And so, but in maybe 2007, I met a girl when I was out dancing, and I still had a flip phone, right? So I opened up my flip phone to get her phone number, and it has the bat symbol in it, you know.
Hmm.
And she was like, "You read comic books?" And so I just closed my phone. I didn't want her number, right? And so then then maybe around 2012, exact same scenario. I'm out dancing, meet this woman, and I tell her that I'm in the comics, and she was like, "You're in the comics too?" And like
Nice.
kissed me immediately. And I was like, "This is the world I've been dreaming of," you know?
That's right. That's right. God bless comics. God bless
Right.
comics.
It's just funny how culture has shifted on that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now tell us a little bit about the Burning Metronome because I know that there are samples of it out there. There's
Yeah.
a history to it and kind of a world that you're building. So if people are not familiar, I know there's some world building truly that goes into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So,
Mhm.
the elevator pitch is six courageous explorers find themselves trapped in a world where they encounter the strangest creatures they've ever seen, human beings, right?
Yes. Nice
Uh,
twist. Nice twist.
right. But it has big Twilight Zone vibes, man. Like and the reason I'm reprinting it now is because it's sold out when I did my TED Talk. And so for 5 years people haven't been able to get it, but they keep asking me about it, which is great. But I
Hmm.
needed to raise
Hmm.
money to print it again. But so I was studying Rod Serling, the creator of the original Twilight Zone, because like I knew his work, but I didn't know much about him. And I learned that he was not a fan of sci-fi or fantasy. He actually, for many years, would write about like war, sexism, racism, whatever, and he would get censored. And when they would
Yeah.
censor him, he would go to the news and be like, "I tried to write about Emmett Till's lynching, but they censored me." So they called him the angry young man of television for like 12 years.
Hmm.
And eventually he came up with this idea that if he hides his messages in fantasy and sci-fi, then he won't be censored. Uh, so that was like beautiful for me to see. Also,
Yeah.
sometimes I joke that I am him reincarnated because I was born in Ithaca, New York, a month and a half after he died in Ithaca, New York.
Oh
And I feel like
wow.
that's all the proof you need.
That's
That's
right. The
indisputable.
soul didn't travel far. That's right.
Right. But this idea of being able to capture what's human, talk about social issues through a supernatural lens is really
Yeah.
appealing to me. And so the Burning Metronome being the first that I wrote was definitely it has a very strong Twilight Zone feel. Um, there's also sort of a murder mystery uh, that's going on underneath it. Um, but yeah, it's just kind of a chance. It's basically, these creatures come from another world. They end up inhabiting human bodies, and then we can look at how humanity treats each other from an outside view, you know?
Nice. Yeah.
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 And so,
That's part of what I. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go ahead, because I've been going.
Uh, I was just going to say that's part of what I love about science fiction is you can get that social messaging and break new territory and get people thinking. And sometimes people kind of engage with some of that, and
Yeah.
then they stop and go, "Oh, this is reality now, and this is an author that's talking about something that I care about, and uh, that maybe I didn't think about before." And you can work in satire, you can work in
Yeah.
all sorts of elements with science fiction.
Man, I could take it back to Aesop or Jesus with the parables, even though those aren't like science fiction, but the idea that if you tell a story about something, people are able to absorb it in a different way than if you point a finger at them and say, like you need to do different about this.
Hmm.
But the other thing I feel about it is art is a really fantastic way to put myself in somebody else's shoes. Um, so like experiences that I haven't had, perspectives that I don't have. When I read art from someone else who has had those experiences and they talk about it in their art, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, um, it does allow me to connect with the humanity of their experience in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, reading to know we're not alone, right? Making those
Right.
connections through the page.
There's a graphic novel that made me cry. I read it probably 2015, 2016. It's by Jennifer Hayden, I think her name is. It's called The Story of My Tits.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm. Yeah.
Obviously not something I could relate to directly, but like talks about like how sort of developing boobs made her, was like her introduction into womanhood. Like it changed the way that the world interacted with her, from a
Hmm.
child to like sexual being sort of. And then she talks about motherhood. She talks about her mother. Like it's just all really beautiful and it's all punctuated by her boobs, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think it's really tender and beautifully written. And that's an experience I could not have had if I had not read her book. I would not have had it on my own. So, yeah.
yeah. I think a lot about like what comics offer too that other types of books or media don't, and that
Mhm.
image that you get to linger on, and all of those kind of pieces. You're talking about sort of connecting and living in somebody else's shoes, and in a comic you can read about that person, but you also see the artist's rendering of that person. So there's a
Yeah.
whole other dimension there that opens up.
Yeah, so there's a friend I haven't seen in some years, but another comics creator named Mel Gilman. And Mel said that comics are one of the few visual media where one or two people can consistently create it.
Hmm.
Like because animation requires a lot more, movies obviously. I mean, so but I think the significance of that is that you end up getting a lot once you get past superheroes, which, I love superheroes, but once you get past superheroes, you get a lot of unique, very personal stories that you might not find in other media. But then also the fact that it's a visual medium, um, the reader, like, when we watch a movie, the movie kind of just happens to us. Like we can engage, but
Hmm.
we don't have any influence over like the pacing or anything like that. But when you're reading a comic, you do. Like, writers and artists can do things to encourage people to speed up or slow down, like add more detail to the drawings or whatever that thing is. But ultimately it's a collaboration with the reader. And so you
Hmm.
have this really unique experience where like you as a reader determine to some extent what your experience is in reading this story. And I feel like that's pretty unique to comics, particularly out of all visual media.
Yeah, yeah. If you put the movie on and leave, it's still going. It's got
Right.
its own life. Absolutely. Yeah. It's been enacted. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And in fact, I just did a movie. I This is my first. Like
Oh, cool. Very
yeah.
cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna say this. Comic book artists, this is as a former rapper, comic book artists are worse than rappers at finishing things on time, right? And
Hmm.
that's not easy to do. But in fairness to comic book artists, I'll say like comics are one of the most intense forms of art to do because every panel on the page is a separate piece of art. If you have 100 pages and you have 6 panels per page, that's 600 pieces of art. It's a lot of work, you know.
Hmm.
Um, that said, you could be reading at the top level. You'd be reading Wonder Woman, and then you'd be like, why did the art change? I love the artist. And it's because the artist crapped out and they had to get somebody else to fill in.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
And it doesn't
happens.
mean that
Yeah.
and it doesn't mean writers are perfect. Writers are late and stuff like that. But comic book artists in particular, they have to deal with the anxiety that every other artist has to deal with, plus the immensity of the labor. But I
Hmm.
say that because I wrote a graphic novel for an artist who asked me to write it back in like 2018, and that person never drew it, and every year was like, "Yeah, I'm going to draw it," and can you send it to me again? And never did. But last year, I was talking with a friend who is a film editor, and he was trying to figure out like what he could do to determine his fate in that industry. And he was talking about doing a short film, and I was like, well, I did write this comic script that feels like a short film. I don't feel any pressure, man, but I'll send it to you. And I sent it to him, and like a week later, he called me and he was like, I'm gonna make this film.
Nice.
So yeah, so we shot in Atlanta in October, and now it's doing film festivals. It's called Always Most of the Time. And I'm just learning this, I guess, but apparently when you make a film, it goes to festivals first, and that's where like a distributor or a streamer would purchase it, and then it would be publicly available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so for right now, it's
Cool.
just festivals, um, but I flew to Miami for the premiere, and it was my first time seeing it with the audience, and
Yeah.
of course, I was crazy nervous, right? Like I had seen the movie, right, but so I wasn't even paying attention to the movie. I was paying attention to everybody's reactions to it. Um, I will say they laughed in a few more places than I expected, which wasn't bad. It just meant they were engaged. But then at
Mm-hmm.
the end, some people cried. It made me cry. And I was like, this is right. This is good. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, may it be picked up, streamed, distributed. That would be cool to see as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's listed on IMDb if people want to see like behind the scenes stuff. But so I mean that was a great experience and I look forward to hopefully doing more of that. But I still love comics. So like even if I was doing movies and television all the time, I would still be creating graphic novels because it's like it's my first love. I've been reading it since I was 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Same here. I have a long history, which very quickly
Yeah.
connected with movies. And your book, your work has this really nice polished feel and
Hmm.
feels very substantial. Anything that you want to say about the creative team that's been part of supporting it and making sure that it stays out there?
Thank you for that, first of all.
Mhm.
So I kind of work with different teams for different things, partially because of what I talked about, the artist sort of struggling. Now, it takes, even if you're like the most diligent artist in the world, it takes longer to draw a comic than it does to write it. So, like a writer can do like, they can, somebody who's really dope can write like 6 books a month or something. And an
Yeah.
artist maybe can do two, maybe, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, with Burning Metronome in particular, uh, it's Kevin Karen did layouts, and he's very dynamic at his layouts. And then Dion Harris did all the line work, and he has a lot of personality and stuff. And then Matt Strackbine gave so much to like, a colorist in comics can end up being like the soundtrack. Like they set so much
Mm-hmm.
emotional tone. So he brought so much to that, and he lettered it. Um, and so, this Kickstarter is re releasing the first book and also releasing a prequel book. Um, and during 2020, because we had a lot of time and I was fed up with artists not finishing things, I got myself back on to the level where I could draw. So uh, the the stuff I did in the museums, I drew those. But this prequel has probably one of the first comic stories I drew when I came back. And then there's an artist, Dalen Ogden, who drew a story. And then Dion came back for some. And then Corey Redford, who draws my weekly newspaper comic, she did some of the coloring. I did some of the coloring on it. And so, it's just kind of like a team effort. And one of the things I'm excited about for this Kickstarter, which, is ending the 30th is the last day you can give. It ends the 31st. August 30th is the last day. But there's this musician, Paul Mullican, who was one of the musicians who did not stress me out when he used to play gigs with me. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so he played with me, he would play drum and keys and he also rapped. But he played drums in the Boulder Symphony Orchestra and so he plays classical jazz. Like that dude's ridiculously talented. He's composing a cinematic score for the Burning Metronome. And so that's one of
Nice.
the Kickstarter rewards. Is like people can get the books and get a download of his cinematic score and stuff he's been playing me is pretty incredible. And then that friend, the one comic book friend I had growing up, his name's Kevin Mason. He's been taking pages from the book and animating them for like sort of promotional spots. So like on the Kickstarter,
Nice.
right? So on the Kickstarter, there's a video that's like the Kickstarter video, and that's me just being crazy and unhinged. But then if you scroll down, you can see one of the things that Kevin Mason animated, and it's accompanied by one of Paul's compositions, and it's really cool. It's really cool. Like it's just
Nice.
yeah, I just love that like something I wrote on my couch, as been manifested through these other artists' hands in really dope ways.
Yeah. Well, and I love how you kind of started in one space and then it's just kind of like filtered, disseminated, and kind of like we were talking with comics and movies, like
Yeah,
one thing leads to another. That's very cool.
right.
Uh,
Yeah. And after the Burning Metronome the first time came out, then artist kind of knew what I can do. Because the thing about any artist, like no matter what kind of artist you are, you have people coming up and being like, "Hey, I have an idea for something. I just need somebody to do the work." Like I have an idea for a song. I just need somebody to write it. Or I have an idea I just need somebody to draw it. As if the idea is the hard part. The idea is not the hard part. We all have ideas. The work is the hard part, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
comic book artists in particular have people coming to them trying to like always sell them ideas and get them to do a whole bunch of work for free. But once they like saw what I could do, then a lot of them were interested in collaborating with me. And so, although I do have a naughty list of artists who asked me to write things and never drew them, uh,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
able to collaborate with some other people, and that and that was really good.
Nice. Yeah. That's part of the industry work, I imagine, is finding those collaborations that become things.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what's beautiful about it is so like, I am at the point where I can write and draw my own stuff, but I don't prefer it. I don't prefer it one because it takes me forever to draw. I write pretty quickly, but the more important reason is that when I'm collaborating with somebody, it the end product is something that neither of us could have done on our own,
Mhm.
and that's a beautiful thing to me. Like so I did a book called Anguish Garden uh in 2020. I did book one and then book two, I think, in 2022. But it's sort of after war with aliens. People think some people are infected by the aliens, and so they're trying to hunt them down and force them into a quarantine. But it's really an allegory for leaving white supremacist movements. And um,
Mm.
and I got death threats over it, but that's a whole other thing.
Wow. Wow.
But I got to work with different artists on it.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
uh, Kevin Karen again came back and did layouts, but Dalen Ogden drew the first one. Sarah Menzel Trappel did the colors, and they were fantastic. And then Sarah is one of the most like reliable artists I've ever worked with. Where like if I'm like, hey, are you interested in doing this thing? Sarah will be like, yes. And here are the dates. I'll give you these pages on this date and like send me a whole schedule and almost never
Nice.
deviates from it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So because we work so well on that, I was like, Sarah, would you like to do a book that's just like ours? And, fortunately, Sarah was down. And so this is what I mean about it ended up being something that neither of us could have done on our own. So
Mhm.
when it's a collaboration, meaning we both own and we can print it as much as we want, um, I'm not hiring them. So it behooves me to ask, like, what do you like to draw? And I'll write something based around that. So
Yeah.
Sarah was like, "Oh, I like to draw like a lot of like structures and buildings. Those are really interesting to me." And so it made me think of you can find like Tumblrs or old websites of people breaking into abandoned malls and taking
Mhm.
photos. And so I was like, "Oh, this is kind of cool." And as I thought about it, I was like, "Well, a mall is a perfect metaphor for grief because they used to be so full of life and now they're empty and
Mhm.
abandoned. And so I wrote this story called Grieving Mall about a woman who has to break into an old mall to find something that helped her reconnect with her recently passed mother. And
Wow. Yeah.
Sarah did such a beautiful job on that, you know. But I would not have written that if Sarah didn't say that she wanted to draw structures, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there's another really beautiful aspect to the book where Sarah Sarah's plus size herself, so she asked if she could make the character plus size. And I was like, yeah, like, yeah. And she told me that in drawing it, it sort of healed her of some of her own body image issues,
Mhm.
which is
Mhm.
something I couldn't have even predicted, right? Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so it's like we're creating this art. that's a beautiful collaboration between us, but also in the creation of it is healing her and me of different things, you know. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so that I love those moments. But
Yeah,
but when
that's
it
hard to
comes to
replicate.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
When it comes to like things that have like a deadline that is a big opportunity, I always draw those because I have to make sure it gets done.
Yeah.
So like the
Yeah.
museum stuff I drew, you know.
Of course, yeah, the managing the deadlines, and that also speaks to Kickstarter of there's the business side, right? There are all of
Yeah.
those pieces to make sure that everything gets out there and on time and all of that. So it sounds like you are well skilled in that arena as well.
Yeah, this is the fourth one I've ever done, and I've had delays, but like during COVID, my shipping got delayed by like 6 months because I
Uh,
printed overseas, and it came to U.S. Customs and just sat there for 6 months.
wow.
Like, yeah, and so that was driving me crazy because it actually like stresses me out to know these people supported what it is that I'm creating, and I'm like not delivering on time, you know.
Mhm.
But that's been the most. And so situations out of my control. I see people who I guess I know people. I know people who have created Kickstarter and it's like 4 years later and they're like, I'm still working on it, after everybody backed it,
Right.
which
Hmm.
I don't even understand, Like I asked for this money because I wanted to create this thing and you know people thought enough of it to back it and invest their money. So I want them to have a good experience. I want them to feel good about what it is that they help create, and um I just take it very seriously. People choose to like support me and the art that I do with their money.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great way to be with it, and a great way to think about the reader. So what is next for you? Anything that you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, so I've been making it over the finish line to this Kickstarter and
Mhm.
uh so my mind has been consumed by it because because a lot of it is inboxing people and reaching out and stuff like that. But once that's done, I can't say a lot about it, but I did start a contract to write for a small comics company, um, a comic that's attached to a big music group. And so that's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the first time. Honestly, it's the first time I've been hired by a comics company to write anything. Like everything else has been me out, just hustling, either self-publishing or museum stuff, or stuff. Or I've been in a few like anthologies of like where it's like prose, and I'm the only comics person. You know?
Hmm. I've read a
Um,
few of those. Yeah.
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's coming. That's basically once this Kickstarter ends, that's what I'm going to turn my attention to because I have to write the first issue by September 15th. So that's coming up.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah. Very exciting things. If I am a listener and I want to support, where are some places where I might find you online, in person, or anything like
Yeah.
that you'd like to mention?
Thank you for asking that question. All right. So my website is R. Allen Writes. It's ALAN, four letters more better. People try to throw in extra L's and E's, but it's R. Allen, ALAN, Writes, like you're writing with the pencil with an S at the end. So that's RAllenWrites.com. There's a free comic section there. There's actually a free comic about how to make comics geared towards young people, but anybody. It's a good foundation that I made. And on social media like Instagram, it's also R. Allen Writes. And yeah, I mean on Facebook, it's R. Allen Brooks. But you can find me all through the website. The website links to the TED Talk, and then also, as I said, there's a free comic section. And then any of the books that I've written that you want to buy, there's a store there. And I am encouraging people to help me get over my last little finish line on this Kickstarter. It's a few days, there's a few days more. And
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
maybe at this point maybe $500 away from hitting the goal. And
Nice.
yeah. And Kickstarter, like if you don't hit the goal, you don't get any of the money. Nobody gets charged. It's just goes away. But so we're pretty close. But there's some cool gifts on there. There's a level you can back where if you want to do a writing consultation, I'll do that with you. There have been 6 or 7 people sign up for that. There's the soundtrack, as I mentioned. There's also levels where I will draw in your copy of the Burning Metronome, um, like personal sketches.
Mhm.
And oh, and there's a guy making action figures.
Very nice. Very
Yeah,
nice.
so you can get that. Oh, he's kit bashing, like so he takes existing ones and creates new ones. And so he'll be making some Burning Metronome action figures, which is great because I would love to have some of those.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, glad to talk with you and glad to support in any way that I can.